Welcome to another edition of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I am your host, Ronnie Harder, and today I am joined by Matt. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Nice little break with the bye week and back into the swing of things with big game on tap. So excited
Yeah,
to break down Penn State and get to Michigan State.
yeah. Not only do the players and coaches get a break, but we get a break too. So it's a nice little bye week for everybody involved. Um, but yeah, let's talk about the last game that Michigan played, Penn State, number 5 versus number 10. They won 41-17 after a little scare pre halftime, heading into halftime. It was 16-14 Michigan at halftime, and then Penn State took their one little lead that they had 17-16, and it just went all downhill for Penn State after that. Edwards had his big run. Corm had his big run. Just the Michigan running game overall throughout the entire day was just complete domination on Penn State's defensive line. And Michigan's defense looked outstanding as well. So, Matt, let's talk about Michigan on offense first. Talk about some of the big takeaways that you saw from Michigan against Penn State.
Yeah, obviously the run game was just bullying Penn State down the field all throughout the game. Donovan and Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum both having 60-plus yard runs. And then the efficiency throughout, on top of those long runs was just very impressive. The O-line played a fantastic game, especially in the run game. Edwards almost 11 yards a carry, Corum 6, and JJ chipped in with almost 60 yards himself.
Yeah.
So, about as dominant as it can be on from a run game standpoint. 418 yards. I don't remember the last time Michigan went over 400 on what many considered a good defense. But I don't remember the last 400-yard rushing game in general, let alone against a defense like Penn State. So extremely impressive on the ground. I felt like they made some plays in the past game, but there was still just a lot of meat left on the bone. They just didn't seem to get in too much of a rhythm in the past game. It seemed kind of choppy. People will obviously point to the interception, but that was just a complete fluke. Any type of tipped interception is always kind of fluky in itself, and that one was tipped, hit another guy, and bounced off another guy's shoulder pads. A helmet, yeah. It's like you can't get flukier than that. So, past game was a little disappointing, but I don't think Michigan and this coaching staff in particular cares how it works.
It's like the Washington game last year.
Exactly. If you're going to run for 418, there's no reason to force a passing game that, to me at least, that when you're just dominating like that. So overall, I think it was anticipated that Penn State would be a little bit better than that. We did, Contown and I did mention on the preview, and I mentioned it a couple times, that I thought Penn State's defensive line was in for a rough game. With them being a little bit smaller, just in pure numbers, just in size of the defensive line. And
they look weak.
Yeah, they absolutely did. Franklin mentioned it after the game about guys they've recruited and having to recruit better and things like that. So it was pretty impressive all the way around from an offensive standpoint.
What are you seeing from Michigan's blocking, especially run blocking, that differs from last year? I mean, I don't want to say the running game looks better than last year's, but I mean, man, there's a really good argument for that to be the case so far.
So we talked about it a little bit, and I was thinking about this, and I haven't got all the way through the rewatch of Penn State. They're still doing a lot of pin and pull stuff that they did last year, and specifically the I think it was the Edwards run. Yeah, it was the Edwards run.
Yeah.
Was a pin and pull with the center, into the short side of the field. So that's a similarity. I suppose they ran a lot of that last year. There, we talked a little bit about in preseason them running a little bit more zone blocking with some of the lineman weight, and they have done that a little bit. I'd be interested to see the percentage, but I have noticed more zone. Previously a lot of the zone that they were running was just split zone, not a lot of zone read. But now with JJ as an element in the run game, they're just diverse all the way around. They can do anything. Olu has been, as we and a lot of other people predicted, an upgrade.
Yeah.
He has just been fantastic. Trente Jones was doing very well in the run game, but then obviously Keegan in now filling in. Yep. So, guard to guard, they are pretty nasty in the run game, and it hasn't been a ton of difference, but they just have so much. Being able to go from zone to gap schemes as seamlessly as they do is not an easy or normal thing to do. Especially at the college level, only a certain amount of practice hours, and oftentimes it kind of takes a different body type from your offensive lineman. So to be able to transition as seamlessly as they do is really a testament to Ben Herbert. And then the job that Sharon is doing, coaching the offensive line. They are, they can do it all. So,
we talk so much about the running game. We talked about the struggles in the passing game for Michigan. They only had, I think, 170 yards or 145 yards, excuse me, passing on a day. And, like you said, and like you mentioned, why force the pass when the running game is working so well? But do you see anything in the passing game that might be an issue going forward, or any concerns that you're seeing so far from the passing game going forward?
I think it's just JJ needing to get more comfortable. And we talked about this, I think it was 2 episodes ago now, after the Indiana game, or maybe it was right before the Indiana game, but we talked about, him needing to see more defenses, this is still only his 6th start. And I think a lot of people anticipated that he would just slot right in, and he's a 5-star recruit, so awesome right away. Well, when you're seeing different things every week, and it's just a growing process. I think his consistency from down to down in terms of his pocket feel, he seems to go through his progressions pretty well. The protection's been pretty good. So overall, I don't have any big concerns. It'll just be continued growth, I think, that will be necessary for it to improve. But he's got the arm to make all the plays. He's got the leg that can extend plays and continue looking downfield, or just take off and run. He's got all the ability, and the line is there to protect him, and the receivers have the ability too. So no big concerns. He has made a couple bad decisions, and one per game type of thing, where it's the things you were hoping would be reeled in by now. But I'm thinking of one where he just looked like he should have thrown it away, and he completed it, and it was
talking about the one where Harbaugh looked like he was pulling teeth.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was one of those no yes plays.
Yeah.
Don't throw that. Don't throw that.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Sometimes especially the quarterback's coach, doesn't care what the result is. You can't be doing that. So, he'll. I still don't think there's a massive problem or anything like that. I think he'll continue to improve, and we'll start to see some of those results.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Like it would obviously be an issue if they're not running the ball as well, but the fact that they're running the ball so successfully, I don't see this passing game being an issue right now. Now, if they're going into Michigan State or even who's the next game? Is it Nebraska or is it Rutgers? I can't
Um,
remember what order it goes. Rutgers, because they announced the time today, so it'll be Rutgers.
yeah,
So if they're
Rutgers
going
and
into these next two
Illinois.
games and there's like, no market improvement, from Michigan in the passing game, then you can start to worry as they head, closer towards Ohio State at the end of the year. But I think for now it's fine. It's kind of similar to last year where like Cade really didn't have that big passing game until he got to Michigan State. So maybe this is the week or the game that JJ finally breaks out and has himself like a huge game. Um, I think he still has had some pretty big games, especially like Hawaii, Indiana. I think those two are good examples of games that he kind of broke out in. So I'm not too worried about the passing game right now, but if they keep going forward and there's still, you know, you know, questions about the passing game, then yeah, then there's room to worry. But for right now, with the running game going as well as it has, and the passing game just being a game manager passing game, I think Michigan's good for right now. So, any last thoughts on the offense before we head over to the defense?
Um, no, I don't really have anything. Just a shout out to the offensive line. That was a
Yeah. Shout out
hell
to
of a
Edwards
performance.
too.
Yeah,
Breakout game
big
for him. He looked
big
he
game.
looked so good. His cutbacks looked really good. His burst was really good too. Um, like it was pretty impressive to see. I'm not gonna lie. So,
Yeah.
um, really good game from Edwards. So let's move over to the. I'm gonna edit that out. What the hell was that? Okay.
Mhm.
Um, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. Michigan just held Penn State to pretty much nothing outside of two big plays. Sean Clifford had a big run, and then he had a 45-yard pass along the sideline. But other than that, Michigan just completely neutralized that offense. They had 268 total yards on offense. I mean, it's just complete domination from Michigan. It was insane. Talk about your big takeaways from Michigan on the defensive side of the football, and maybe like a guy or two that stood out to you.
Yeah, I thought the guy that stood out the most to me was Jesse Minner. I I continue to be impressed with him.
Yeah.
He has a game plan for everyone. I mean, even the little stuff like the Penn State loves to do that hurry up screen to the boundary with three wide receivers and just get a 3-on-2 situation that gets an easy 5 yards, and like Michigan was ready for that often against them. And it just continuing to put the guys in position to make good plays. I just really thought that it was pretty much a masterpiece against Penn State. And Michigan has had success against them in the past, being able to control their offensive line. But this one just seemed like, I mean, outside of that long run, which was, 60-ish of their 270 yards. I mean, it was a nothing. It was nothing all day. I mean, they had that throw in the bucket on DJ Turner in the long run, and that was,
it was a beautiful throw too. I'll give him credit for that.
Yeah, that was just over 100 of their 268 total. I mean, on 2 plays. So just pretty impressive all around from Minner. And I thought the corners, including Mike Sanders, still all kind of showed out a little bit. DJ got beat on that one play. But outside of that, it's pretty difficult to pass on. It seems like people have tried Green a little bit, and they stopped trying Green. And then they seemed to try Turner in this game, and that didn't work either.
Nope. Outside of that one big play, which was
Yeah,
it couldn't have been better defended by Turner, honestly.
it's
It
just a
was just
perfect
a
throw.
really, really good throw. Probably the best throw of his career that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So,
So, yep. And Mikey continues to.
yeah.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. That dude was
Yeah.
playing
I mean,
offense last year.
big credit to Klink as well. I mean, he's really earning his money right now. I mean, he had the big reputation of developing guys at Kentucky, but man, he's showing it off here at Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, Jamon was really struggling
He was dead in the water last year.
well, in 2020 he was okay.
He was
But
getting some draft buzz in 2020, like as a guy in 2021 to watch out for.
yeah, and he ended up getting hurt a little bit, and he wasn't playing
Mm-hmm.
very well before he got hurt.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden he bounces back, and you can't throw on him.
Nope. At
And
all.
then and then obviously DJ's development has been big. You know, for him, big thing was getting healthy.
Yep.
And then Sanders still, I mean, and then obviously Jay Harbaugh too, with Makari really stepping up, and um,
Yeah.
Moore's been up and down a little bit this year, but and
Yeah. And I think that kind of stems from his injuries and just missing all that time during camp.
yeah.
So,
Yep. So that's true. I hadn't really thought about that. He did miss a lot of time in the off season. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the defensive backs, and then Jesse Minter. I mean, it's been pretty impressive.
And a shout out
man.
to Will Johnson too. It seems like every rep that Will Johnson gets, he looks better. Honestly, and he had that big hit on Clifford too on Saturday, which was another plus in my book.
Yeah, I think some of the technical stuff is coming for him. I mean, I think it seems that maybe not by the end of this year, but certainly by next year they'll have a guy that they can really rely on.
Yes,
out there on the edge. So,
absolutely.
I mean, Maryland, the only Big Ten team so far to score over 20 points. So, been pretty impressive start to conference play.
Yeah. You know what? Obviously, last year Michigan had Ojabo, Hutchinson, two of the better pass rushing or pass rushers in the nation. Outside of the Alabama guys, you could even argue they were the best. But anyways, there was talk about this pass rush not being as good or just being as dominant as it was last year heading into this year. But it seems like what Harbaugh was talking about throughout the spring and throughout the fall, it's just a pass rush by committee, and they could even be better this year than they were last year. And so far, that's coming to fruition with guys like Mikey Morris and Iabi Oki, Derek Moore. Just seems like countless guys just stepping up when it's needed the most. Talk about Michigan's pass rush this year compared to last year, and what your biggest takeaway from their pass rush is so far.
Yeah, I think it definitely has been by committee. Obviously, it was kind of floating around the internet prior to the Penn State game that Michigan is actually ahead in terms of total sacks. Now, some of that has to be taken into context with Indiana's offensive line and then Colorado State. But overall, they seem to do an excellent job of getting home when they dial up the blitz. And then it seems like in true passing situations, third and medium to long, they really can get after it in a pretty effective way. Really, the next step for them is to be able to, when teams are throwing on 1st and 10, being able to still get pressure on those downs. And, I still think that last year's unit was better only because every week it was like, okay, do they have someone that can block Aiden?
Yeah.
And the answer was almost always no.
No, right.
So, and I don't feel like we have one guy that can do that, but overall, I believe I saw the stat they're averaging over 2 sacks a game, which at the end of the year would total up for right around the same total as last year. So overall,
and that's the mark of a great DC as well.
Yep.
I mean, you're scheming these guys to be able to rush the passer with ease, even if they're not singularly as dominant as like a Hutchinson or an Ojabo from last year.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, the Hutchinson, a Daxton Hill make the scheme a whole lot easier when there's one or two just dominant level guys out there. When it's all 11 are good and you can scheme them into a great defense. I mean, that's a whole different animal from what they were last year. So
yeah,
it's been fun to
I
see.
agree.
Minter's been a home run so far. So, and we kind of talked about that, preseason and in the time that he was hired. Like, if this guy wouldn't have went to Vanderbilt last year, and if he would have just been like the Ravens DB's
DB coach. Yeah.
Like, everyone would have been pumped about getting Justin Minter.
Yeah.
He goes to Vanderbilt 1 year, and we're all like, "Well, I'm not sure if he's a good D coordinator." It's like, no, he was at Vanderbilt. Like,
yeah, and Michigan got roasted too, by national media and other fan bases talking about, oh, they hired a guy from Vandy. And it's like when you look at the whole picture, the whole backstory of not only the reason why, but also like his past success. And even last year, like Vanderbilt ended up like I think they were like top 10 in terms of takeaways in DB. So like his impact clearly was felt in the defensive backs, room. But they're in the SEC. They're at the bottom of the ACC, like they are every single year. There was only so much that he could do
yeah,
as a DC with the roster that he had. So
yep,
it's not like this man went to, I guess you could throw out like a Kentucky or a Tennessee or something and was still bottom of the barrel
right.
with talent on the roster. Like this man went to Vanderbilt. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on like the defense or maybe like the interior guys or maybe the linebackers?
Chris Jenkins is really good.
Yeah.
I
hope he stays another year.
Yep. Mozzie is awesome. I know his stats aren't jumping off the page, but he's controlling a lot of games. I thought Colson played better this game.
I thought so too.
Looked a little bit more comfortable out there. I still think the linebackers and coverage is kind of a weak spot.
Yeah, I thought Barrett was out of position a good bit.
It seemed like they kind of subbed him out more than usual too. So,
yeah.
So that was interesting. So,
so a little bit more Boulder.
Yeah, and Mullins. I mean, a good amount of Mullins, like over 10 snaps of him. And I don't know that we've seen that yet. So,
and correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of looked like they kind of schemed R.J. Moulton in the box a little bit more, and then brought in Quentin Johnson.
Yeah, so that was a little bit I started noticing. I suppose maybe it was happening a little bit before, but I started noticing it in Indiana a little bit that he was a lot closer to the line than he had been previously.
I mean, he's really good rushing the passer.
Yeah, and
crazy.
some of his like true linebacker skills haven't been that great, like playing the run. But if you're in like a dime package and let him get after the quarterback, I mean, him and Michael Barrett can be pretty disruptive. Doing that. So, interesting to see what they'll continue to do with the different packages on defense. I think that's another thing that's a little different than last year. Last year it was really just the 3-4, and then they go to the 4-2-5.
Yeah, they're running a bunch of different formations.
Yeah, they're doing defensive packages with, 3 true corners, 3 true safeties, 2 corner. Their typical nickel 4-2-5. With Sainer still at the nickel.
Yeah, it's some like 5-1-5 package. I mean, it just seems like they're just dialing up a lot more formations.
McDonald did a little bit of. I shouldn't even say a little bit. A good amount of 5-1-5 for the first few weeks, and then they tried the 6-1 against Michigan State, and it was terrible.
Yeah.
And it seemed like once they basically shelved that completely, And it seemed like they ran a lot less 5-1 after that as well. So
Yeah.
um, it's just a lot more this year. It seems like they're utilizing a lot more players, both starters and sub packages. It's been this whole shift in general. First McDonald, now Minner, to this style of defense has been extremely refreshing.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a really good thing to see, and I'm glad that they can continue the defensive domination from last year into this year, and heading into a big game with Michigan State this week. So that does it for this episode of the Hail to Michigan podcast. Stay tuned for our MSU preview later on this week. It'll be me, Matt, Contown. All three of us will be previewing that game, as well as our mid-season, I guess you could say, awards and things that stood out the most so far for us. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, go subscribe, download, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast from. Be sure to do all that. And as always, go blue.